This video is going to be kind of a change of pace for, maybe a big change of pace for what we've done in the last few videos. Almost all the time when I do tutorials, it's kind of observational based painting, and you can see a reference picture and you can see me working from that reference, and we just go at it. And then these kind of speed paintings that are reference based are really fun because it's a good way to train, but this is really different. In this case, I'm working purely out of my head, and in one of the sort of struggles with that is having no reference for proportion or the design or anything. I'm having to be a lot more careful with my line works because I'm effectively using the line work as the reference. Here, just working out of this idea I had while doing the dishes today, and I thought it was kind of going to be a beautiful idea. It was this idea of dusk pouring the stars herself, pouring the stars into the night sky, and I just had this image and I thought it was worth giving a shot, so this is that attempt. You can see my line work, my initial line work, and now kind of doing a little bit more final line work. I guess the tentative process here is because I really have no idea where I'm going. I just know that I want to have this figure crouched on something, pouring stars into the darkness, and that's all I know. Having to work out a ton of things here with the hand and the gesture of the hand, and how maybe the palm is laying open and the fingers kind of curled around whatever it is, the stars, or maybe some netting that she's pouring the stars out of. Not quite sure. Fun to kind of draw the proportion out of my head. Usually I don't do that, and here it was just kind of a fun exercise, and thinking about where maybe the hand would rest and behind the back, and how the feet would be crouched, and where the weight would be, and kind of pushing up into the thigh and stuff. So just fun stuff. I think working like this is great to share, because I think there are a lot of different ways to create a painting, and a lot of times the things you want to create don't exist, and so sometimes you have to create a process that's really sustainable for work that's more imagination based. Here I couldn't figure out what to do with clothing, and I just end up, I don't know, I think this solution of the earrings, jewelry, necklaces, bracelets kind of thing, I think that for now is a good solution, because it keeps the figure light, and I don't have to lose that kind of contour of the body where I really want that to be the focus, and that kind of light on her feet kind of form where she's crouched down, but there's a feeling of lightness in it. And I was afraid with the clothing that I might lose some of that, so I'm going to try to get at some of the characterization through accessories as opposed to full garments. The hand, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that either. Just kind of struggling with that. But if I struggle too long with something, I might just kind of do a real quick scribble of where it's going to be, because I don't want to get too mired down in any particular detail. I want to keep moving and keep the energy of the piece going. Here, I mean, I'm trying to think about this character as like a personification of dusk or twilight, and in that maybe literally she's pushing back the day. Maybe that's that diagonal line there. She's going to be pushing back the day. I've brought in a couple reference pictures here, and just for color, because for me, I like sometimes selecting color from an already existing image. It just helps me get a little more unity in my composite, or in kind of my color palette, and it also speeds up the work. So I just grab with the brush, I just hover over the reference picture and hit the Alt key, and I can get a color there and just move fast. I'm using a brush that has a lot of texture, as you can see, and this kind of canvas texture brush, which I love just because I'm an oil painter, and that just makes me feel comfortable and kind of right at home. I also like working really big. When I start doing the blocking phase of the work, so first we did the mapping or the line work, and now we're doing the blocking phase where you're just putting in local color. I like to do that as rapidly as is possible. So using as big a brush as you can comfortably use, and sometimes uncomfortably use, just to focus on speed. I like to put down those initial blocking marks with a big textural brush, and then after that go in with another big texture brush, so just to create a little more variety, still doing that same blocking, local color, finding my palette, but creating some variety in the texture and the mark making, so that what parts of this early phase of the drawing end up showing through in the final piece, they'll be full of energy, they'll be full of texture, and they'll give the piece some variety in the end. Switching brushes again to a really funky texture brush, which I really like, just kind of to block in some of the darker areas. And now for the first time, just kind of exploring what some of the details on the face and the actual character are going to look like. Again, not painting from a reference here, I'm just feeling it out and trying to figure out what the lighting situation is going to be, and knowing all that my light source is warm, meaning that everything in shadow is going to be cool by comparison in terms of color temperature, but not knowing exactly where to put the planes of the face or how it's all going to fit together. And that's just, I think, doing all of this kind of out of your head and doing it convincingly comes a little easier when you have a lot of practice doing it from real life. So I think doing imagination-based or kind of out-of-your-head drawings and paintings is a cool and fun exercise, but I think it's hard to do when you don't have a background, an academic background, or a lot of training in proportion and light and color and how that stuff works. But not to say that a person can't just jump into art in that direction, but I do think it helps to do a lot of studies of real life, and that's why most of the time on this channel I'm going to focus on that. But occasionally I'll jump into work that's like this, and I think it can be really useful too. So in this phase, it's really important to just keep it simple, because you can get so lost in the details and you can get so stuck trying to figure out one particular problem around value or the surface planes or a transition between light and dark or something with color temperature. So if you find yourself ever getting stuck, I would suggest just leave it and move on. And a lot of times when you're working around an area that's problematic, you might work yourself right into the solution. You might just solve it coming at it from a different direction, so to speak. So sometimes, like on the nose there, I might not know what to do at the end of the nose, but maybe just by drawing in the sky, I'll block in the nose in a way that's satisfying. So if you ever get stuck, just keep moving, and try, if you can, to keep your brush big, and that'll afford you the chance to avoid that pitfall of getting stuck in details, especially early on. And the faster and more fluent you can be in the beginning, the quicker you get to the fun stuff, and the more energy you'll still have for that when you get there. I think here I'm just having a little bit of a hard time at this point seeing my line work, because I have it on a separate layer and I'm just painting over everything and kind of rapidly, and losing a little bit of the structure that I spent some time on in the beginning. And so I'm going to have to come up with a solution for getting that back, but just going to have to switch the layer order. But for now it's still working, because I just want to do that big blocking, and if it's a little bit off, it's not a big deal. It's very easy to change. But from this zoomed out vantage point, I mean, I like to work in this way, zoomed out a lot, because you can start to see the whole picture emerge all at once, and painting the painting as one, like as a whole, not thinking, hey, I'm going to paint the knee, and then I'm going to paint the elbow, and then I'm going to paint a foot, but thinking about the whole picture as a whole, all together, the value, the color, the texture, the rhythm, the balance of lights and darks. So I think that helps. So I try to bounce from out in, zoom out, zoom in, see the whole, see a part, and never get, again, too stuck. I think one of the other hard parts about painting out of your head is coming up with a realistic or satisfying color palette, something that is convincing, and if it has like internal consistency and the color temperatures hold up. But then when it's this fantasy-based concept that you know, it doesn't just feel like just another realistic picture. So there's a lot going on here, and I think it can be super fun, especially for me, since I do quite a bit of kind of realistic work. It can be really fun to take a break from that and do stuff like this. I like to do one or two of these imagination-based kind of bigger projects once a month, and you know, like I said, once or twice a month, and it gives me some freshness. And it's cool how these kind of imagination-based pictures can be really informative to your, you know, realistic work as well, because you're still solving visual problems. You're thinking even harder about some of the basics than you are when you're doing something that's kind of just from life, you know, out and painting plein air, or from a reference picture, maybe something you took and brought back to the studio. So you just really have to have good fundamentals to pull off something like this sometimes. Here I'm trying to figure out what to do with the bag or net full of stars, and what that might all look like. And you know, just one thing, kind of a creeping feeling at this point for me, is that it's starting to feel a little cluttered, and that I wanted her to feel like she was amidst this very spacious and expansive scene, and that she's there doing this pretty majestic thing, and and uh, and there she is, kind of like among it. But I don't feel that right now, and I'm gonna have to make maybe some changes to the canvas size to adjust that. But here I just put the initial line work on above everything, and I set the blend mode on that layer to divide. So it took the dark lines from the initial drawing and turned them into white lines, and that really helped, because this picture is dark. I mean, this is a night sky, kind of a dusk sky, and so everything was dark and I couldn't see my line work anymore. So putting it on the top layer, moving that layer just above everything else, and then making the blend mode divide. And you can change your blend modes just by looking at the layers palette, and typically any layer you have selected, it has normal as the default, and you can click that where it says normal, and you can change that to multiply or overlay or whatever, and divide toward the bottom will take whatever's in that layer and just basically invert it. So you know, black becomes white, orange becomes blue, so to speak. So and that layer was just line work, so now you can see these nice white lines, and that's helping me find my way a bit again. And so I've lost a little bit of the structure of the body, and this is kind of helping me kind of tidy that up. Again, I don't worry about if I go kind of far afield a little bit with my proportions and stuff when I'm doing the big brush work, because I'd rather have sort of a freshness and energy than be perfect, especially when I'm at the beginning part of the picture. So you can always kind of bring it back together and tidy it up, but I think that's easier than sometimes painting with a sort of recklessness that you can get away with in the beginning of the picture. So I always kind of err on the side of being a little wild in the start. At first I was going to make these splashes, you can see stars, I decided to change them into birds, and I think that feels a little bit better with the theme and the mood I'm trying to go for. This dusk-like figure sitting at that threshold of day and night. I wanted to find maybe some creatures or animals that represent transition or transcendence, and I'm going to go for birds and fish. And you can see me start to put in some scale-like texture in the background behind her to represent fish, and then I've got these, there's a couple of birds here, and again I'm just getting that feeling of it's just too tight. I don't have enough room around her, so eventually I'm going to have to do something about that. But switching my brush up quite a bit, just playing around with some new brushes, and these particular brushes are some that I got on ArtStation from a really great artist, and unfortunately I can't remember his name right now, but I'll put it in the description of the video so you can get access to those brushes yourself. And he made them available for free. I do know that it was a guy, but I can't remember his name. And I'm very fond of the brushes. I think they're really cool, especially for artists who have a background in traditional painting. They just kind of feel right at home using them. You know, even though I'm painting a night sky and you know, I kind of have the color palette laid out, what I want to do is make that night sky feel like it's full of stuff, be it creatures or stardust or rocks and ice. I mean, I just want it to feel like there's a lot going on in that soup of the night sky, as opposed to just kind of like a pretty consistent gradient from top to bottom. So I'm kind of working on that, and then take a break from that and kind of get into the face for a little bit. This is one of the first times, you know, you've been able to see. I'm just sitting here with the face and trying to figure out the proportions a little bit and what this character is going to actually look like. And that's a real satisfying time to finally give myself the chance to jump into that really fun stuff. You can see the brush I'm using has color jitter as a part of its character set, and color jitter is really cool because what it does is as your mark scrapes across the canvas, the virtual canvas, the colors are going to modulate a little bit. They're going to there's going to be some transition in the color and in the value, so that you're not just painting with the color selected, but just this family of colors that are near to that color. It acts, I guess, in usage, it feels a little bit like how oil paint reacts to sunlight. And because oil paint, as you drag it across the surface of a canvas, it's picking up the texture of the canvas, but it's also picking up, because the oil has so much paint body, the thickness of the paint picks up different amounts of light depending on the angle of the paint as it reflects light off the canvas. So color jitter kind of approximates that and gives you a little bit more of that like real life painting feel using digital, which again, because I'm an oil painter, I love. So here I just got to do it. I'm going to expand the canvas finally, and I have this idea that I'm going to put another fish in and around her, and we're just going to go big. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited now. I got a really big nasty brush just to block in all the background really quick, and I'm excited in the bottom corner to have this fish eye kind of staring up at her or out at us, the viewer. I'm not sure which yet, but I just think that'll be a fun sort of secondary focal point to have in the picture, to have this other character in the scene. So we'll see how that goes. But again, all of this, I'm just sort of making it up as I go, and I thought that would be fun to share because this is a pretty wandering, meandering path. This picture was not planned out, so to speak. So you're just kind of seeing the good ideas and the bad ideas all come together. I can't decide if I want there to be almost like a surface, as if this is like, you know, the sky and the water enmeshed, and there's like stars dripping, falling into the water, and then there's kind of sinking down, or not, or if it's all just, you know, in the depth of the sky. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that, but yeah, I'm gonna have to make some decisions about that soon. I guess I'm gonna go with more of the whole thing is the night sky, and just that there are these fish there, but not really make it look like water or that there's a surface with ripples or anything. So I'd like to get a little more feeling of the scales, and I'm really wondering how much I need to paint or how little detail I can get away with, because I'd love to leave as much of this kind of rough textural ambiguous space behind the figure and where the fish is sort of just emerging out of this dark you know, just murk of the sky. But I don't know, we'll see what we can get away with. not only do I not have a vision for the exact composition when I started this picture, but I didn't know what I wanted to do stylistically either. It's just sort of one of those things where you just throw yourself at it and see what happens. Um, when I have a picture like this that I'm excited about, but there's a lot of uncertainty with, you know, the vision or the objective. That's where it can be really, really fun to involve friends or family and just sort of ask their opinions, because um, not that you'll always listen to them, but you know, they will have opinions, and when they give them to you, either you'll agree or you won't, and that'll help you know where you want to go with it. And it, as soon as someone says, "Oh, you should do this," if you'll have that instinct that's like, "No," and that's super helpful, because you know that maybe you didn't know what you wanted before you started talking to them, but once you start getting alternating or alternative viewpoints or other people's perspectives on where this thing could go, you'll immediately know. It helps you kind of all the different sort of internal reactions and responses you have to their kind of vision for the piece will help you find your own. So it's sort of like, if you don't know where you want to go, at least you can find out where you don't want to go. And that's sometimes just as helpful. So in this picture, I've taken a couple breaks and asked my wife and asked a few students, and then, you know, flipped the canvas and kind of just took a walk and come back. And those are all strategies that I have when I'm excited about it, but I don't know what I'm doing with it, and I do want to do something that, you know, I want to keep it. I want to make it something that I bring to resolution. So, you know, another one of those sort of what ifs for this picture is, I thought, what if we make it a little bit like a moon or a planet, as opposed to these sort of floating rocks? But we'll see how that goes. It's fun to paint the moon, like suggestions of the craters and stuff, so that's definitely a perk. I'm still leaving the line work up. I'm actually kind of fond of it. I think it looks really cool, and it'd be fun to find a way to do a picture with this white line work kind of outlining everything. It'd be kind of an atypical sort of way of doing line work, but we'll see. We'll see. I'd love to get away with not actually having to paint the stars, but let them just be these kind of globs of light, but I don't think I'll be able to do that. For now, I'm going to leave them as these kind of chunky white globs, or kind of yellow white globs, and we'll see how long I can go without having to figure out what to do with that. The forearm is a little bit short. Initially, I was thinking of having the arm bent, and yeah, so I'll have to figure that out, but I'm going to go ahead and, as you can see here, just using my mixer brush and blending in my, I guess, the skin tones mostly. It's nice to have in this picture, which is very dramatically texturized and has just a ton of chunky feel to it. It's nice to have some part of the picture feel a little bit quiet, and that's what I wanted to try to do, is have this kind of juxtaposition of her very super smooth and modeled rendered skin, and then this kind of textural, chunky, rich background, and see if I can pull that off. And maybe I can use the bodies of the fish and the birds as sort of a middle ground to connect those two different approaches to the texture and rendering. So we'll see if that strategy works, and if not, we'll make some changes. But right now I'm just taking my burn tool, which is a traditional photo tool that can add like just darkness. It's sort of like painting by like exposing light to like light sensitive paper. So just like burning and dodging, these are the photo tools from like traditional darkroom process. And I was just using the burn tool to give a little bit more richness to my shadows. But I found a great brush here, and I love it. It's this really meaty textural brush, and it's helping me kind of, again with the mixer brush, knock down some of the texture, smooth things out, but not smooth it out so much that it feels out of place with this rough and chunky background. So I think that the tool you use with your mixer brush is just as important as the tool or the brush you use when you're just using your normal brush. And yeah, so that's just, it's working for me. I like it. Little experimentation is definitely helpful. Here again, just kind of softening and playing with the birds, and um, this is probably a bad idea, but I have had this suggestion of a bird in the bottom here, and I'm just trying to paint the whole thing with the blurry mixer brush. Probably not the right tool for the job, but it's you know, it's advancing the cause little by little, so we'll come back to it. Working around the canvas, just trying to knock down the more obnoxiously chunky parts of the picture and give the feeling overall, or the painting overall, a little bit more of a feeling of unity. And kind of working on that transition between the body of the fish and the background, helping it feel like that transition's a little more natural. Really, really, really just working on edges. Um, and here you can see that I'm kind of at a stopping point, but I'm kind of going to zoom in on this detail here and show you kind of where I'm at right now. This will just be part one of the video, and you can see the rest of it in the days to come. But between this detail here and then the full screen shot, you can see that it's coming along pretty nicely from where it started with just that line drawing, and it's really evolved, and I'm starting to have a real fondness for it, and I'm excited to finish it. And thanks so much for watching, and we'll kind of go in that next step, the part two of this journey together. I think that video will most likely be a lot shorter than this one, as there's not all that much left to do, just some unifying and clarifying and focusing in on what really this picture needs to be about. So hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Take care.